Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Defenders and Lab Coats. I have a very, very amazing guest joining the show today. But before we kick it back over to him, I always like to say, let's promote the lab, right? That's how we grow as a community, is collaborating and learning, get to know with one another. So please make sure you like, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends and family or your dog, whoever gets the views, right? So I would like everyone to meet Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Lab. How's everything going?
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I was so excited when you're wanting to come on to this platform, because you and we've definitely collaborated. It's always been a fun time in the area. So Chris, would you kind of mind giving us a deep dive into your background and journey into cybersecurity?
Sure, absolutely. So let me introduce myself real quick, and then we'll kind of run with that, because I'm one of those guys that's been around for a little while. So my name's Chris Lindsey. I have been developing software for over 35 years. I ran an application security program for over 3, writing secure software for easily, I claim 15 in the security industry, but really, quite honestly, it's probably closer to 25 to 30, because I've been writing healthcare software over the years. And how did I really get started? Wow, that's a good question. And if you want, I'll just dig right in.
Go for it. Yeah, why not? Let's hear it.
All right. So my journey started back in 1979. No, it really did. But the reality is, to me, cyber is absolutely key and important. And I've had good mentors over my career. When I started, I was just doing amazing development things, kind of doing my own thing. Really, when I went to college, I was already writing software professionally and had a lot of fun there. And then when I went on to graduation and writing software professionally for the industry, it really kind of, for me, working in the healthcare field, you have to absolutely be secure.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so having those mentors, those people, the lab, community, working with you to teach you the best things, that's really kind of one of the things that I look at, is just making sure you have somebody that you're mentoring. If you're a senior person, mentor the next generation behind you, because when you do that, then everybody is secure. And I kind of joke about it, but I've had APIs. I claim 15 years, but actually I was doing some calculation, and it's actually closer to 20 plus, but that have never been compromised. And a lot of people can't say that. And the trick to that is just good security hygiene, and we can get into it, or I've got our articles out there, but it's just one of those things where, just having that mindset is really important to kick it off. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So I have to ask this. You talked about mentors, and we might be kind of deviating a little bit off the topics that we talked about before. That's totally okay, right? It's one of all of us in cyber. Now you talk about mentors. Have you ever taken a lesson that a previous mentor had and give it to a mentee down the road, and you're like, oh my gosh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, since I've been around, I'm kind of one of those innovators and upfront people. And so I made a lot of those mistakes. I've been kind of in most of my career, that go-to guy for the team, for everywhere, the senior developer. So I didn't really have, I have had a few in the past that were really good mentors to me, but really for me, it's the lessons I learned and then passing it on. But there is one guy that really stands out, that really, back in about 2008, that I was working with. He was very focused on certain aspects of communication back in the day when you were using early on APIs, and we didn't have REST. We had different things that we were doing back then that were much more complicated and more strenuous. And we were doing things where I was just like, this is so much overhead. Why are we having to do this? Why are we going through all this pain? And when you start looking at what that meant and what that translated to, then all of a sudden it really made sense when that light switch clicked and it says, look, when you validate the data when it comes in, no matter what,
Yeah.
100%, if a field shouldn't be more than 15 characters and it exceeds that, either somebody's doing a man in the middle, somebody's sending you something wrong,
Yeah.
or maybe you have a site to site that's communicating with you and just has the wrong requirements. But so many people try to fix it. And when you try to fix it, then the reality is you may be fixing something that's compromised and you're just trying to clean it up and pass it on.
Yep.
And then that creates more problems down the road. And so, really at the end of the day, when you have something like that, you just want to make sure you just log it, throw it out, can it, and go forward.
Yeah.
But back in the early days, there's so much work just to do some of the things that we do today and we take for granted.
Oh, yeah. Someone I work with, they're like, anyone could be a developer, just go to ChatGPT,
Wrong.
So I have to ask you this, Chris. I know a lot of people like on the defense side and the security operations role and everything. And we get so focused on the endpoint security, the server security, what's happening at the firewall. What's advice for people to learn more about app security, right? Starting literally from the outside coming into a business.
Right. Well, think about it this way. And I know I was just mentioning APIs, but think about it this way. The vision that I have when I talk about this is Game of Thrones. And when you think of Game of Thrones, you've got all the soldiers, you have a castle in front, you've got that road that's in the middle. You see, Daenerys and some of the other guys, standing on riding their horses, sitting there. You've got all the, the armor and just everything going on. But you have that road that goes right to the castle. And you have that moat, and the moat's down, the drawbridge is down, and you can walk across and go to the door and talk. And the reality is an API request is just that. It goes through your edge, it goes through your firewalls, it goes through potentially a web application firewall, and it goes right up to your server and it looks right. It goes, hey, look, your request response, everything looks great. Welcome, come on in. And then bam. And when you have that moment that's, just like, oh my gosh, wait a second, this is not right. It's usually too late because you just didn't, the way that it's coded on the back end, we have a SQL injection that's not command parameterized, right? So when you're not using parameterized queries, guess what? Now you can concatenate and do things, or it's numerous things that you can do on the back end. And so that's why it's important when you look at security, you look at the edges, when you really understand all the pieces and how it all comes together, that makes a huge difference. And I frequently tell people, go out and I'll name drop this. You can remove it if you need to, but VMware or some kind of virtualization software. And in the old days, it was free. You could still get some stuff that's out there that's free, but spin up your own environment. You can run a firewall that is just, IP firewall is an open source firewall that mimics an actual firewall. And you can, even some companies use it, but there are open source software firewalls that you can run as a virtual machine and mimic these environments and Kubernetes and all that. And all of a sudden, now you can set up an environment that mimics your production and look at it from a blue team, right?
Yeah.
Am I secure? Can people get in? What can happen? And then you turn around and you start looking at it from a red teaming standpoint. And how can I attack it and the different things that I can do?
Yep.
And when you start taking it from that red teaming, oh man, that's when the fun begins. And yes, AI is fun at that point.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I remember when I first started my college journey, I took one secure development class. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, they teach you how to program in college, but they're teaching us wrong. Everything's a lie. And now, like, being in corporate, and you might be able to relate to this a little bit, but it's just developers, they tend to think about the security side of coding after, the product's been released. And that's when that vulnerability scans happen. And then I often see on LinkedIn and X and, these developers, they're like, I have no idea what my vulnerability findings mean at all. And from your perspective, how would you translate that into layman's terms, or even some advice to developers now kind of getting to that secure mindset?
Yeah, no, I lots of great things. So to begin with, you should be working with your security team. If you have security findings, reach out to them. somebody on that security team should have the ability to work with you, to be able to explain it. Now, I'll give you a shortcut. You could run something like a ChatGPT or something, pass in, hey, what is a SQL injection? Give me an example, give me a resolution to that, and it will give it to you. Keep in mind that OpenAI, LLMs, and those guys right now are 52% wrong most of the time. And so when you're getting an answer, it's kind of maybe, maybe not, some more, some less. But the reality is, okay, so better yet, use Claude, use GPT, use another one, and do three, the best 2 out of 3, right? But the reality, but the reality is you can lean on LLMs and AI to help give you that information and at least kind of have a beginning standpoint. Most of the stuff that's out there, the basic stuff is going to give you the answers. It's when you start looking at the questions of, hey, I need to encrypt something. What's a good encryption algorithm? What is a salt? And what is a good salt? And some people, they just drop a couple characters for salt, 5, 10, whatever. I'm more of the mindset 25, 30, go big or go home, right? And it takes a little bit more time, in the processing, but guess what? You're not going to get compromised.
Yep, for sure. And it's just also amazing, like even the mindset, right, of like thinking like that is crazy. And I remember the first time I actually opened up owasp, and I was like, oh, this got real.
It gets real really quick.
And then really I don't know if you've ever dabbled with their threat modeling tool. What is their dragon tool? I mean, I completely went blank on it, but
to be honest with you, I haven't played with it.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and really I should, but I have access to a lot of the paid tools, and so that's kind of what I use.
You got the fancy tools, don't ignore me with my open source project, recommendation.
I'm sorry. No.
Well, that kind of leads to my next question, Chris. With people kind of learning more past the software development lifecycle, and we start talking about that secure software development lifecycle, what are some steps that you recommend for people to start dabbling in that? And I know threat modeling is one way, but from your side, what's your advice on that?
Really, think about it this way.
Yeah.
You've got the tools that are out there for threat modeling, because threat modeling really is kind of the beginning stand, where you start. And then you also think about secure architecture. Before you even write that first line of code, start thinking about, where is this going to run? If it's a command line utility, then does command injection really matter? Not really, but don't be lazy. The big thing is making sure that, when you start looking at the project, the different thing you're working on, again, reach out to your security team and ask them, hey, do we have a security architect that I could work with? Or here's my proposed design. Do you see any holes in this? Or, you do your initial draft, but really it goes back to those little fine details. If you're going to write code, write your unit tests. That way, when you compile and you do things, did I break something that I wrote? And you can start doing some things. And guess what? GPTs will give you a lot of that already. You can pass in, some of, hey, here's an open source utility or thing that I'm doing. Give me some unit tests or some test cases. Be careful not to just upload your source code, because if you do that for your company, you're now breaking a lot of things. So do not do that. But you can create some example methods to get some example unit test cases that you could work with. And, the reality is, when you start really digging into this, just think long-term and think about, not just your immediate, and kind of going back to what you were saying earlier. A developer, their focus is just getting something out the door. I have a task. I need to get it done. I'm behind, I'm behind the 8 ball. I've got to get it done. I'm late, and just, do whatever I can, cut corners. Somebody else will pay the tech debt down the road. The check will come due. And when it does, it's usually pretty painful.
Yeah. And hopefully more on the consumer side than the ransom side.
Yes. Well, and there, I have so many funny stories, because really, when you start looking at the older technology, so many people in the early days used eval for JavaScript, and it was for evaluations, but it's also a massive security hole that has been determined today. same thing with a lot of the software out there. When you start looking at the way that things used to be done in the early days, it was concatenating strings for SQL, to hit the database and just some basic things. And then really things have evolved and the tools that have gotten better. I mean, from a red teaming standpoint, when you start looking at AI and what it can do, it becomes very obvious that applications have to be secure, because if they're not, they can be compromised in minutes. But back to the eval thing, you know, the fun thing, and I can't give the whole story, but one of the fun things about this, and this was for a company that I was helping with some security stuff, but they had this eval that was on the login page, and I identified it through some tools. And when I did, I was able to run PowerShell. And one of the first things I did is I ran pings. Well, the ping came from their server, not from the client side, which means then at that point, I can start doing so much on the back end. I can do downloads, I can execute things. And so at that point, back to the ransomware, I can go in and say, okay, well, let me pull this file down, let me kick it off, and then bam. And guess what? There was no logging and nothing else that would kind of help indicate this. And this made it through the firewall and through the web application firewall and right on in. And so, when you're looking at it, it's just that old code is just plagued with security debt and developer tech debt. And so just trying to make sure that at some point you go back and look at it and really kind of that analogy of the castle. When you do have an application like that, bring it out, put it in its own sandbox, not tied to your regular computer network, your enterprise network or your lab, your home stuff, depending on what you're doing. And then that way, if you do get compromised for whatever reason, it's self-contained and it can't bring in no east, west, nor south.
Yep. Absolutely. All great points too. When you're telling your story, I kept thinking about like some of the things like in my journey and my experience and stuff. And I'm like, nail on the head on a lot of these points. I used to go to school with this kid, and he's not a kid anymore. He's an adult. He has children. And he called me one day and he's like, I cannot believe this developer. And I was like, oh, what's up? And he goes, he just doesn't want to close any ports. And he goes, he's just leaving port 22 open. And I'm all like, why? And he goes, I don't know. And I was all like, I'm sorry.
I know why, but I'm not going there.
It's just like one of the stories, that you hear and you're just like, why, man?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. Those are the questions that, the security team should be looking at, for your logs. And, the question is, do I log too much? Do I not log enough? The reality is this. You can't overlog everything. Grab it, because here's the reality. If you're compromised, you're going to have it. If you underlog it and you're compromised, you may never know. Or, hey, we got compromised, but we have no signs. We can't see what they've done because we didn't log it. You know what? Log it. Storage is cheap. Put it in there. Put a good rotation on there. Put some good, things. And you can dedupe on your logs, because, you may be having a lot of event viewer things being flagged, right? A lot of events.
Absolutely.
And they're the same thing. Well, guess what? Just, put them in, put a tag and say, hey, this occurred 30 times, but you don't have to record the whole thing. You just log, hey, this is the same, and then have another database or whatever that says how many times and the date stamp.
Oh, I went to a conference not too long ago, and Splunk was there, and it's one of my favorite shirts. And I've told you about the shirt on the last time we talked, but it says, I like big data and I cannot lie. And it's so true. We are data hoarders.
We are. It's kind of funny because I have 3 NASs at my house.
Oh my gosh.
And I am standing or probably spinning somewhere around 275 to 300 terabytes spinning. So when you talk about data hoarding, maybe. Now, to be fair, I do run a server. I do have things going on with it. Well, I guess it's on that side there.
On that side, yeah.
But the reality is, I'm doing a lot of things. I'm logging a lot of things. But again, you look at your lab and you look at what you're doing. And is it practical to have 300 spinning at home? No. But when you're doing some of the things that I do, yes. But having something that you can dump all that data to, because there are some amazing tools, open source tools that you can use for data aggregation. That's a lot like Splunk, but free.
Yeah.
Especially for home lab use.
Absolutely. There's so much out there. And I know this is not part of our topics, but what's your recommendation for people that are wanting to start in that home lab environment?
So what I would do is think about what you're trying to accomplish, because what is your home lab for? If
Yeah.
you're going to be playing with, attacking software, the big thing is when you're playing with, and honestly, even for companies, right? Think about doing tabletops for ransomware and actually have a
Yes.
real network that's not connected any wires to your internal thing, and actually put ransomware on there and go to town and
Yeah.
actually run it through and see. And so when you're at home and you've got your lab and you're playing with things, my preference is you can buy some really, really, really cheap servers that are
Yep.
used with some decent memory. They're a little bit of a power hog, a little loud, so put
Yeah.
it in the other room, but put it on the network, put it
Yeah.
on its own network. But again, spin up some virtualization, and if you're wanting to mimic a real environment, then you can spin up a database, a web
Yep.
server, the middleware, whatever you're doing, be it Linux, Windows, whatever. And then you can set up another server that you can go attack with.
Yeah.
And when you have your front gunner, so much cool things you can do. And when you're doing all this and you have it all prepped and
Yeah.
ready to go, then you do snapshots. So that way you can go in, blow it all away, do what you want to do, and then
Yep.
reset it back to that point in time and say, okay, it never happened. Now let me try it from this angle or this
Oh,
angle or
yes.
this angle. So now you can reset your environments in seconds versus, well, it took me 3 days to get it up. It's going to take me 3 more days. No, guess what? Took you 3 days to get it
Yep.
ready, to get it up. Take that snapshot, take some backups, bam, go do it, revert it back, try again.
Snapshots save lives.
Yes, they do. Absolutely, they do.
They're great. I feel like you need to do a POV home lab tour one day on like LinkedIn Live or something, just so we can like see the wonderful mysteries of the Willy Wonka chocolate factory. But
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
no, that's awesome. I never have, I would say, the space to do the home lab, but I'm always like living curiously through other people and what they're doing. And it's
Mhm.
such a great project to like write an article on or a blog or just anything because everyone's always curious with what are you doing at home, you
Right,
know?
right. Well, and the reality is a lot of ideas and inventions come out of this.
Yeah.
So a lot of ideas are based on needs, and I want to do something. Well, I can't find it. All right, well, I'll write it. If you have a
Hmm.
developer background, that's your mentality. Well,
Yep.
if it doesn't exist, I'll just write it. Now, then the next question is, do I open source it or do I
Yep.
actually make it a commercial project and go on my own? Who knows, right? But
Yep.
the reality is when you're playing with it and you've got your lab, you find these things. Hey, it would be great if
Yeah.
can't find it, but with open source, there's so many great things out there. You can find something similar.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of companies use Grafana, and
Yep.
to have Grafana at home, most people are like, why would I need that? But when you start looking at the different things that Grafana can do, and then you
Yep.
start having your own syslog server, and then you can bring in your stuff, then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second. And then all of a sudden, at some point in time in the future, you realize, oh my gosh, I have a enterprise level grade network
Yep.
lab at home. And
You're like, I throttle my kids' Fortnite traffic.
well, and we laugh about that, but for years I've had a business class firewall for
Yeah.
my house because I do the content filtering, I do the things.
Yes.
The only way that, and my kids are older now, but the only
Yep.
way that my kids could have gotten away with anything is to go with mobile data.
Yep.
And even still, I still had some visibility, but not much in what they were doing.
Yeah.
But if your kids are doing something like that and needing the bypass, then really the big question is, what are they doing?
Yeah. There's
Because
more. There's more to that than
that's
I.
another deep topic.
Oh, absolutely. And there was this one person that was my mentor back in the day, and they talked about how they were setting up their own, firewall at home, just really trying to learn more about it at a home
Mhm.
level. And whenever it was time for dinner, he would kick everyone off of the Wi-Fi. And the kids would be like, Dad, I can't, like, my phone's not working. I can't watch YouTube. And I'm like, well, let's go get dinner. I'll fix it when
Yep.
we're done. I was like, that is parenting right there.
Oh, yeah, I had the apps. I too could go,
Boom.
boom, you're done. Well, and I could even say, you know, between these times and this time, it just shuts off.
Yep.
So we typically eat dinner at 5:30. So 5:30 to 6:30,
Yep.
no Wi-Fi. You know, and then kicks off at an appropriate time. The other thing too is we always told the kids no electronics in their rooms,
Yes.
simply for that fact that you don't know what's going on.
Yep.
But when you've got a network and they don't realize all the things you can do until they get older, then all of a sudden you do see them do things that they really shouldn't be doing, and then
Yeah.
that's when you're like, okay, let them experiment, or
Yep.
depending on what it is, put a stop to it immediately.
Yep.
So, but
And
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, Chris. I was gonna
Oh,
say,
and
like, it's just this like upcoming generation with technology and everything. And I think about, my parents. I had a Nokia, you know. I can imagine like 16-year-old Reanna with internet access. I would be making terrible TikToks, you know.
oh. Well, so the funny thing is when your kids start becoming very technical like you are,
Yeah.
then you kind of rub off on them, and sometimes not in the right way, sometimes in the right way. My son Matthew, when he was in high school, he
Yeah.
brought his laptop home because they were given laptops, and he's like, "Yeah, it's slow. It's this Windows. It's blah
Yep.
blah blah." He goes, "I'd love to have Linux on there," and I'm like, "Yeah, install it on the thumb drive, and then that way you can plug it in and out and be fine."
Oh
And
my gosh.
so he decided he came home and was playing with it, and he goes, "Dad, it's," and this is at 10 o'clock at night. He goes,
Yeah.
um, "Yeah, when I reboot, it goes straight to the Linux, but
Oh no.
The Windows is gone." And he actually blew away the whole Windows
Oh
partition.
my gosh.
And I'm just like, how are you going to explain this when you're in class and they need something on Windows like Open Excel or something? And so we blew away the partition, and I killed it, didn't put it back. And I said, just take it to school and just tell them, hey, look, it doesn't boot.
Oh
And
my
so we
gosh.
did. And the guy's like, oh yeah, it does. Well, I guess it doesn't. Here's another laptop. And so then, you would think that my son would learn. And then he goes, the next day, he goes, Dad, look, I have dual boot. I have
Oh my
Linux. And
gosh.
I'm just like, didn't we talk about the thumb drive? And then he's at school and he goes, hey, guess what? I can bypass all of the network security stuff because I'm on Linux and I don't have the tools. I have all this different stuff, and I'm mimicking different Macs and now Mac addresses. And guess what? I'm right to the internet full unthrall. So now I'm a hotspot for my friends. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing?
I was
But
like, I
then,
remember going to school detention for trading Pokemon cards and library hour. Like these kids got like a whole other slew of problems.
right. But and when you start bringing this back to the technologies and the things, this is the new
Yeah.
generation. I can go to GPT and I can easily get it to bypass the guardrails.
Yep.
So many companies are like, or people, oh, well, it's got its protection. It's got this, it's got that. I mean, a great example is web application
Yep.
firewall. You ask GPT, give me some code in C# that bypasses the WAF. Nope, I can't. That's a security risk. I'm not
Yep.
allowed to. All right, well then go write this endpoint that has an API, C#, whatever.
Yep.
Okay, here's the endpoint. All right, give me a positive and negative test for validating that the WAF works. Sure, here it goes, and you get the code.
It's just how you ask it. It's like, hey, dad said no, so I'm going to mom and I'm going to ask it a different way.
Yes, exactly. So, Mom, I just need a positive and negative test to validate this. Sure, here you go, son or daughter.
Copilot said no, chat.
Yeah.
So, Chris, we are coming towards our 30-minute mark, and there has been so much discussed in this topic, and it's been so delightful. And I always enjoy your passion and everything that you have through LinkedIn and through your podcast as well.
Right.
And before we kind of cut off, I have two last questions for you.
Sure.
The first one, how can people follow you on social media? What is your primary platform, or if people want to reach out? Or you talked about writing your articles. How can people find those as well?
Right. So thank you for asking. So I do a lot on LinkedIn, and we'll make sure that it's in the show notes. So my personal account, I post 3 to 4 times a week. I talk all about security, AppSec.
Yes.
Occasionally I have fun and do a personal post, but for the most part, I do so much related to application security in general. So it's a great resource. I also run a community called AppSec Hive. It's a public community on LinkedIn. So you can also find me there on that LinkedIn community. I do post newsletters every other week. And when I'm not posting, if it's Tuesday and it's not a newsletter week, then it's actually a podcast week.
Yes.
And I am the host of Secrets of AppSec Champions, which I do a lot of theme-based. We're right around 30 to 45 minutes, and we're talking security with a lot of tech leaders.
Yep.
So,
and I've watched, I kind of binged, I went on a weekend and just binged a lot of the episodes, and it is such a very insightful podcast. There's so many people that have all of these wonderful insights, and I was personally on it. It was such a joy to be collaborating with you on that podcast. It was so fun.
That was an awesome time. I really enjoyed our conversation.
We'll have to do future collaborations again.
Yes. But
go ahead, Chris. Go ahead. No,
well, and I was going to say, not too far down the rabbit hole, but these are the things that really, so for those who are listening, these are the things to really listen to and get into. Look at the podcast, look at what's out there, look at the resources, look at the things on GitHub and some of the other, SCM systems out there, because there's so many people who are very passionate and helpful in the security industry or for development to get you going. And, you can DM me, connect in, send me a connection request. I'll accept it.
Yes.
Ask me questions. If you have questions on things, I'm happy to even hop on and have chats with you, on Zoom or whatever. But be part of your community. Go to conferences. There's so much stuff there.
There's so much. And I always say, like, cyber is such a collaborative industry. Like, people want to hear from you. People want to learn, because if we stay still, we're going to fail.
Yes.
And plus, we drink copious amounts of Red Bulls and black coffee. So.
Yeah, a lot.
A little bit. So my very last question for you, Chris, what is some advice that you can leave with our listeners?
So don't stop learning.
Yes.
Because the moment you stop learning is the day that the world will pass you by.
Yes.
So always stay diligent. Things are changing. Real quick story again. I'm full of stories. I do VIP dinners, and I'm sitting in front of 15, 20 CISOs and people who are running security programs for large and small companies, mostly large. And I always ask the question, technology has really progressed so far in the last couple of years. And this was before AI was publicly accessible, before your chat GPTs. This was a year or 2 years ago. And the reality is, I would always say technology is moving so fast. You have these script kiddies, these young, kids who are Minecraft generation, because they dig and dig and dig and spend hours doing really just digging. And that's what hackers do. And so you have these kids going out attacking you. And the reality is, what are you doing to protect yourself? What are you doing to stay ahead of that curve? And so if you're not always learning, you're going to get past. And when you get past, it's going to hurt. And when it hurts, it could hurt a lot.
Absolutely. Oh, that's such great advice. And that's definitely, it doesn't even matter if you're in cyber. Like, that is great advice, period. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's always so nice to have very passionate people come on this platform. And of course, Chris will definitely have some of his highlight notes and the details below. So make sure to check out his platform, his newsletter, and his podcast as well. And of course, bug him, ask questions. Chris loves questions.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys. And we'll see you next time in the lab. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.